Few characters in fantasy literature have a path to immortality as strange as Conan the Barbarian. Born from the mind of writer Robert E. Howard in the early 1930s, Conan is now a cultural icon, but his history is packed with surprising twists and fascinating curiosities. Let's dive into the untold story behind the legend. Believe it or not, Conan wasn't meant to be the star of an epic saga. He was actually a replacement. Howard had grown tired of writing stories about another one of his heroes, King Cole. So, while reworking an unused Cole tale, he decided to reshape the main character. He sharpened his personality, gave him a roar, more dynamic energy, and just like that, Conan was born ferocious, cunning, and surprisingly human. This simple act of literary recycling created one of the most influential fantasy heroes ever. The world Conan lives in, the Hyborian Age, is another curiosity. Instead of creating a brand new fantasy world from scratch, Howard set his stories in a fictional, forgotten era of our own Earth's past. This was a time after Atlantis sank, but before the rise of the ancient civilizations we know. This clever approach allowed him to mix real historical cultures with pure fantasy. So as you read the stories, you might spot echoes of Vikings, ancient Egyptians, and even Roman legions, all coexisting in a mystical prehistoric landscape. It's a world that feels both alien and strangely familiar. Another little-known fact is how Conan's personality was shaped by mail. Howard was a frequent correspondent with his friend and fellow writer, H.P. Lovecraft. They had long, passionate debates in their letters about the merits of barbarism versus civilization. Howard championed the strength and honesty he saw in a barbaric life, and he poured those ideals directly into Conan. This clash between raw savagery and corrupt sophistication became a central theme in the stories, giving Conan a philosophical depth that you don't often find in muscle-bound heroes. He wasn't just a brute, he was a statement. When it comes to adaptations, Conan's journey is just as interesting. Long before Arnold Schwarzenegger swung a sword on the big screen, Conan made a huge splash in comic books. The 1970 Marvel series, written by Roy Thomas and drawn by Barry Windsor-Smith, was a massive hit and crucial for reviving public interest in the character. But here's a fun fact. Marvel almost passed on it. They struggled for years to get the rights, because the license fee, which was a pretty modest sum back then, seemed too expensive at the time. Once they finally took the plunge, Conan became one of their biggest successes of the entire decade. Conan has also been at the center of some unusual legal and editorial battles. After Robert E. Howard's tragic death in 1936, many of his unfinished Conan stories were completed or entirely rewritten by other authors. This often led to drastic changes to the character's personality and motivations. For decades, dedicated fans argued over which stories were authentic Howard and which were not. It wasn't until the 2000s that a serious effort was made to restore Howard's original texts. This revealed a Conan who was much more intelligent, complex, and introspective than many of the later versions had portrayed him. Even the iconic 1982 film starring Schwarzenegger has its own quirks. The director, John Milius, was a fascinating figure himself, and he injected the script with philosophical ideas from Nietzsche and the ethics of samurai culture. These were themes far removed from Howard's original Pulp Fiction roots. Yet, this unexpected blend of him-minded philosophy and brutal action became iconic, and it's how millions of people visualize Conan to this day. It's a perfect example of how an adaptation can take on a life of its own. So, from his origins as a recycled character to his unexpected philosophical depth and a tangled history of adaptations, Conan's legacy is far more complex than just swords and sorcery. Behind the muscles and the legendary adventures lies a character whose own story is as strange and fascinating as the Hyborian Age itself. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into fantasy history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more. See you next time.